These are two good clarifications.
Welcome to the May 3rd meeting of the Wethersfield Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr. Margiotta, would you do the roll call?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Harley?
Here.
Myself, Margiotta, is here. Clerk Roberts, absent. Members, Mr. Hughes? Hello. Mr. Oracle?
Here.
Mr. Hammer? Mr. Mickey?
Here.
Mr. Dean? Mr. Allard?
Here.
Mr. Edwards? Ms. Antoniak?
Here.
And Mr. Silver.
Here.
All righty. So we have 8 members. Everybody's participating. Item number 1 is a public hearing. Let me take item number 1, 3.1 is a public hearing application 1904-16-Z. VetMed LLC seeking a special permit in accordance with section 5.2.1 of the Wethersfield zoning regs for demolition, new construction of a veterinary hospital and associated site improvements at 434 and 442 Silestein Highway. Let me take I'm going to ask the applicant to address us and explain the project while he prepares. I will take a moment to go over the public hearing process. A public hearing here will start with the applicant making a presentation to the board. The board will ask questions. When they feel they have enough information, we will turn it over to the public to make comments, and we will then have the applicant come back and try to address those comments to the best of their ability. Again, the board will continue to ask questions. At the end of the process, if we feel we have enough information, we will close the public hearing and move on to a deliberation on the application. If we feel that we need more information that can't be supplied tonight, we could move to hold the public hearing open until a subsequent meeting. All right, so that's how we'll work through this. All righty? So with that, would you introduce yourself and your project?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Christopher Giuliano. I'm a licensed land surveyor and professional engineer with the firm of Giuliano Associates. We maintain an office in the Yalesville section of Wallingford. I'm here tonight representing VetMed with respect to 434, 442 Silestein Highway. The plan before you is to come onto this site, remove the existing buildings, parking, gravel that's associated with the site, and build a new 5,600 square foot veterinary hospital. So just to orient you with the property, the mapping, Celestine is on the bottom of the page, north is to the left side. And the two buildings are 434 and 442. And the property is roughly rectangular with a small dog leg heading out to the east towards the Stillman Walk Condo Association. The buildings currently are not used. The site is very run down, which I'm sure that you're all familiar with. To our north is Dunkin' Donuts, and to our south is 446 Silestein, which has an approved site plan for, I believe, a service retail use. I believe that came before you in 2015. So what the applicants are proposing to do is remove the two existing buildings and associated existing site improvements and construct a new building centered on the property. We're going to have a parking lot on our north with a one-way driveway towards the back of the building, coming around with some employee parking on the south and a one-way access back out on the side of the highway. The reason for this particular configuration is that there are particular improvements for 446 that involve our property because we both have an easement, a joint easement over the south portion of the property. That easement is undefined in width or scope other than to cover the paved area. So as part of our design, we've matched into the Close Jensen and Miller plan for this piece of property, held their improvements, and then worked our improvements from that point heading to the north.
To clarify, if I may, just a moment. They have an easement over your property,
Their
per se,
easement
right?
is basically a cross easement for this driveway, but it's primarily for
It's
their use since
in
it's on
our property, correct.
That's
Thank you.
One of the interesting facts about this project is during the design process, we have to do stormwater calculations, pre-construction and post-construction. Due to the fact that the existing site is building, pavement, and gravel, there's really no grass or vegetation other than a small strip on the east. The runoff calculations post-construction are actually less than pre-construction. Kind of an unusual situation for most projects. So what that allowed me to do is not have to focus on stormwater retention and control peak runoff, because it's happened naturally, because we are planting much more green space, grass, and vegetated areas. So instead, I focused in on water quality. To do that, I proposed 3 rain gardens located throughout the site and an infiltration strip along our easterly edge of our development. And what this will do is will improve stormwater quality leaving the property before it gets into the wetlands to the east on the Sealand Peak property. Landscaping, we did receive comments from the engineering department, 18 comments in total, and we have addressed these with the latest set of plans, which I believe was delivered to the town earlier today. So we have addressed some of those comments with respect to landscaping, and I'll go into a little bit more detail, because we did receive comments a little bit later today from Mr. Gillespie. So, landscaping is pretty much straightforward. Again, we detailed out the quantity and type of plants, both common and botanical as requested. With respect to site development, basically grading and utilities, again, this is not a really difficult site. Site tends to fall off from the Silestein Highway down to the wetlands, so we were able to work with that existing grade and not have to do too much earth movement to get the proposed building situated on the site. With respect to the site utilities, due to the age of the building and probably the utility connections, I am anticipating that they will not be suitable for the proposed use, either undersized or poor quality. So with the revised plans, we've shown the particular utility connections, gas, water, and electric, sanitary going out to the existing easement that runs along the easterly portion of the property. Yeah, not too much.
What's that rear NDC, that's a sanitary, or is it?
We have a sanitary easement that runs basically from approximately the Stillwood Common, comes down to heads west to our property, and then cuts across to the south.
Oh, it's going south?
Yes. Yep. So basically, the existing sanitary easement runs.
And it comes from where, at the top?
We believe it terminates right here, but provides, I think, possible access into or was built to provide access into the condominium project.
It serves them, or?
Not 100% sure.
Oh,
because
okay.
we did not pop that manhole cover back there. For our purpose, there really was no need. In addition, CLMP has major utility easement going across the back. As you're aware, the overhead towers are behind the property. So,
Excuse me, another question along that same line, sorry. The MDC and the utilities, both have a right-of-way and they on top of each other right there?
correct. Through the eastern tongue, MDC's easement and CLMP easement.
Right.
Is an aerial easement, basically, for the overhead.
It's aerial, of course, yeah.
So, no
but-
conflict.
But who actually has, well, never mind.
Who owns the property?
We own the property, they just have easements over it, so.
To make
our
sure
use-
you can't build on
Our
it.
use of
Right.
that property is extremely limited.
Yeah,
Basically, it's the same
true.
green space, vegetation, so.
thank you.
You're welcome. And then we just have basic site details. All right. So, as I started off to say, we received 18 comments from the engineering department, roughly last week. We addressed those comments, and we got those drawings back into town earlier today. As I said, Mr. Gillespie's comments were just dropped on my desk this afternoon, and with mad dash frantic, I tried to go through those comments, and what I have here is just the site location, site layout plan, where I've addressed those comments from Mr. Gillespie, just to let this commission know that the comments are very minor in nature, and we can deal with them. There are 2 that I'll talk in a little bit more detail, but for the most part, I'm just going to go through these comments.
So-
Bear with me.
Yep, so as you do that, Peter, these are comments that we haven't seen?
No, these are comments that you saw that were provided to the applicant last week, so I'm
Oh,
not sure
okay.
why Mr. Giuliano didn't get them until today. I just want the record to reflect that they weren't generated today, and they're the
Okay.
same comments that you have in the file.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct, and I didn't mean to.
I thought there might be
infer
another
in any way that
round.
Mr. Gillespie didn't get them to me. That was an internal thing on our side.
No,
So it has nothing to do with the town.
just wanted to make sure there wasn't another round of comments or something that we didn't see.
So, basically going through the comments, the flood zone limits and inland wetlands were added to the plan. That was done as part of the wetlands approval, wetlands comment and wetlands approval. With respect to the driveway and the shared easement, as I stated in my early part of my presentation, that easement is undefined, it's nebulous, only really accounts or ties into the paved area. So there really isn't anything to depict, unfortunately.
Is that noted on the revised print?
Yes, in fact, on my survey drawing, sheet 1 of 6, we note that there is this easement on the property. Yes, sir.
As you're going through, because we received these revised plans this evening, if you could just note the changes on the revised plan from the plan we received in our packet, it'd make it easier for us.
I will do that. Sure, all right. So, start back up since I'm only a few into them. Limit of floodplain and wetlands. We have a dark line along the property, so that is your limit of your floodplain. We have inland wetlands, which is the line with the little triangles, and both are labeled, and those should be labeled on all 4 drawings. The survey, site layout, landscaping, and the site grading development plan. Again, driveway shared access easement, the easement's noted on the survey, but there's nothing to depict on the various plans. I'm gonna skip the next comment because I want to come back to it, and that has to do with the site demolition plan. It's one of the issues I want to talk about in a little bit more detail. Specific to the site layout, basically include a utility plan that identifies where the proposed gas, electric, sewer, water services are proposed. I've done that on the site development plan, sheet 4 of 6, which was delivered to you, so you should have that. We do depict the proposed gas line, the proposed water, the underground electric, and the sanitary line going out to the easement in the rear. Add the typical PZC approval block. I did do it on my revised drawing that I have up here. It isn't on your set. This is what I took care of this afternoon. I will confirm that that meets your town standards. I'll do that with Mr. Gillespie. That shouldn't be a problem. We can easily take care of it, as you can see. Handicap parking stall sign location. On the plans that were dropped off today, I actually have a sign legend on the site layout plan, and we do show the proposed handicap sign with the correct destination for our proposed sign. I was asked to add the building dimensions. I've done that on this plan, and I'll make sure that gets onto the final set with the note that we will refer to the architectural drawings for specific dimensions. Zone table. Clarify the conflict between the gross floor area of the building as noted on site plan, as noted on floor plan, and then it deals with parking waiver. I believe that Mr. Parsons, correct? Mr. Parsons got a comment and stuff at the either, I'm not sure if he said that. No, that's fine. All right. Basically, there was earlier rendition of the plan that had a little bit smaller gross floor area, so that's why there is a difference. But basically, as I stated at the beginning of my presentation, we're dealing with a 5,600 square foot building, basically main floor. We're about 1,000 square feet in the basement level, and then roughly 975 feet on the second floor. And it's that second floor that's going to be used basically for staff purposes, break room, storage, and 2 offices. So with respect to the parking, basically Beaverbrook Animal Hospital has a similar size facility now at their current location. They approximately have about 5,300 square feet. They currently have 21 parking spaces, and it's enough for their particular use. They're gaining about 200 square feet overall between what they have now and what's being proposed. The layout of the building is, of course, different and more attuned to what they need. And on this particular plan, we're proposing 25 parking spaces. So there's not a big increase to what they're using now, but we have a modest increase in parking. So based upon the actual use of this particular facility, we believe that the 25 parking spaces will be sufficient for the use. Should the commission Personally, I think it would degrade the aesthetics of the site plan somewhat by cramming 3 more parking spaces, cutting down on some of the green space. We can meet the intent of the regulation, but we feel that based upon their usage, what they have now, for what this is sufficient parking for what they need. And I don't know if too many have pets.
In your narrative about the business, you reference that you'll be hiring more employees, having a higher volume. There'll be more of a feel-good outreach for that type of business. Do you expect that to have a larger traffic flow to, and what is the present traffic flow now or parking usage? Is it ever saturated?
No, it's not. In fact, in their current location, they end up having more problems. They're next to a funeral home. They end up moving their parking to that use. So they're never full at their current place. So even with a staff, maybe longer hours, bigger outreach, they still feel that based upon their historical use and the statistics from the builder, TWC, is that this is their primary, one of their primary focus is just veterinary hospitals. They believe that a parking count closer to four per thousand is more typical and it works well for this particular use. Again, it's all appointment based. It's no retail where people come, just drive by and drive in for a reason. It's appointment based or emergency based, so the parking count will be enough for this particular use on this site.
Based on your hydraulics, your pre-post calculations, would adding those spots, are you above by so much that adding these spots has any impact on that?
They would have no impact on it. No impact on, I would not have to add any type of detention. We would be fine with that respect.
Are there any peak times, or is it because of appointment only, it's spread out evenly over the day as far as
It's
use?
spread out over the day. It is spread out. Next comment was to add tactile pads at the various ramps, and we've done that along the sidewalk in front and handicap ramp at the main entrance. Mr. Gillespie's next comment was to consider a handicap ramp at the employee sidewalk. That would be this sidewalk here on the southern side of the building. I did check the grades earlier today, and we can just comply with handicap of 1 and 12, so we would have to put a rail along the sidewalk. It is something we will consider. We don't know if it's necessarily something we would necessarily want to do because of an additional cost, and we're not sure on the exact benefit to the facility that it might add, but we will consider it. Traffic direction signs and pavement markings have been added to the site layout plan, sheet 206, as requested. Next time, the plan proposes 2 parking spaces in the front yard setback, and we should, Mr. Gillespie said that we should request a modification waiver from the commission in writing. If you have that, I will submit it. Please prepare it. So while Mr. Asher is getting that, I will continue. Mr. Gillespie talked about adding a that is a waiver request.
Yep.
Mr. Gillespie asked us to add a concrete pad and gate for the refuse dumpster area enclosure. Originally, it was designed with a concrete pad and a fence enclosure. I added the gate to comply with his request. Sidewalk, yeah, Mr. Gillespie asked for sidewalks at the 2 rear door entrances, which are now depicted on all the plans and called out. Building footprint is identified at exactly 25 feet from the front yard property line. Mr. Gillespie was worried about any overhangs and any non-compliance after it was constructed. This plan here shows that I had moved that building back 1.5 feet. So now we should have no problems, and that small change of sliding the building back has no effect on the grading, drainage, utilities, that whatsoever. It's a simple change to make. Identify location of the required HVAC, mechanical, or condenser units. Unfortunately, at this time, that too early to do so. The specific building design has not been done. That won't be done until we actually go and apply for a building permit and full architecturals are done. So at that time, we can modify the civil site plan and provide staff with an updated copy.
Can you offer us an expectation of where you would think they would go? Is it going to be rooftops or
No.
ground mounted?
First of all, based upon architecturals, we had pitched roofs. So utilities are all coming in at the back of the building, so any kind of HVAC convention would probably either be in this corner or in this corner back here. Basically shielded away from Silestein Highway and the majority of traffic.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then extends the sidewalk out to Silestein Highway, which I have done on the site, shown here on this revised site layout plan. I'm gonna skip over the site landscaping plan comments. That's my second point that I wanna come back to at the end. Site grading and erosion control plan. Mr. Gillespie asked that we have close coordination with our neighbor to the south, since they have improvements that tie into ours. I have contacted Close Jensen and Miller. I did get the contact information for, I think it's McLeod LLC, that's Carmen Gugliotti. So we have their contact information, and the applicants will reach out to them to coordinate the improvements along the common boundary line so that everything works out for each person's use. Site lighting, basically, again, similar to the HVAC, once the final structures are determined, we can get a full photometric design to this town as part of the building permit review process. And then exterior elevations, we'll add the building height dimensions, and we'll correct any incorrect label elevation views. So I want to go back to the comment regarding site demolition plan. I'm just going to put the survey drawing. Basically, I don't have any particular issue with providing the site demolition plan. My only comment would be, since this entire site, pretty much from this rear property line to the Silestein Highway, everything that's there is going to be removed. I question sort of the value or purpose of a demolition plan. We're removing both buildings, we're removing all the gravel on site, we're removing the pavement on site, any dirt on site. I highly doubt that the existing utilities due to age are going to be sufficient for our use. Again, if the commission wishes to have a demolition plan in here, I would gladly do it, but I'm not sure with respect to an actual construction purpose, if it's going to pose much benefit to the overall design.
Can I ask Peter, if that's part of our regulations? Is it something that's routine, like demolition?
When we have a site where the existing conditions are being demolished, we usually see a demolition plan. The applicant's indicating they are proposing to remove everything.
That's a plan.
That's the plan. So if you're willing to go with that, it just, sometimes things are saved, other times things are worked around, and other times everything's demolished. So,
That includes utility, all the utility.
that's part of the reason we wanted the demolition plan, to understand everything that was being removed and things that were being saved, because it may or may not have a impact on the site plan review. So I defer to you. To be technical, I think if you look at our site plan requirements, there's not a specific requirement for a site demolition plan in all cases. So I leave that up to you. There is a little paved area or gravel area. I'm not sure if there's pavement under the gravel that is off-site. That is in the if you maybe could point to that. There's a couple of areas there that are we had asked that they be removed. It's just going to be an odd condition that exists after the fact. If they aren't demolished and removed, they would need to seek permission from those owners. I don't know that permission would be unreasonably held back, but that's probably the only area that's a little
Wait,
gray.
who owns those two there? Because they're undulating there, right?
We're really only, I think, primarily concerned about the power company, that one. There's another one that's next door that right now, I think some of the employees at Dunkin' Donuts use this lot as a cut-through, which obviously will not be allowed to continue. It's paved back there, so.
Despite what I may have said in previous commission meetings, I have in the past wanted to go site to site. And we did talk about an issue down the street the other meeting, our last meeting, about going from, say, a Dunkin' Donuts onto the other site. And we might have been talking like we wanted to discourage that. And yet I feel that kind of thing is good, so I think this commission ought to make a decision on those things as we go, site to site. And it may include here the same thing. I wouldn't say cut that off, but it concerned me when I saw it today when I was down there.
So that area that behind Dunkin' Donuts also has a sort of a curb cut area where they can get through into that back parking area through their own property. So cutting it off does not eliminate their ability to use that.
That's correct.
So in this case, and I think there's a rain garden proposed in the corner, which will further obstruct. So I think the applicant's plan is not to allow that to continue.
Not to allow that driveway.
Right. Not to allow that cut through.
So they're gonna, what, cut it off with what?
Well, we have our pavement ends in here, this is all gonna be landscaped, and then our rain garden in here, so.
And the
it's
rain
basically-
thing is in the way of the driveway, or will be where it is now? Okay.
Correct. I mean, to be honest, if perchance that use was something other than the dump, if it was another service-based industry, I don't think that a cut-through or a connection compartment would be the worst idea, to be honest. But given the use, the high volume, those people parking here to go in or driving through, I think it's going, having that cross-connection with that particular use, which is a very high volume use, as we all know, would be detrimental to the veterinary
You
hospital.
wanna discourage them from parking in your lot, right? Even though you're your new neighbor to the south, you're gonna,
I
you
won't-
potentially could encourage it, right?
Well,
Theirs.
We are required, we have to, because we.
They have to do that.
We have this cross easement existing, so there's nothing we can do about that, that's fine.
Okay.
Again, this is more of a retail, service-based, I believe, use, so, traffic volumes are similar, hours are similar. A little bit different with the high volume of something like the Dunkin' Donuts, or even a fast food place. That, I think we would like to try to discourage the cross connection. Okay. The last thing I want to go over is the site landscaping plan. We did address the engineering comments and added the table to the amount of plans as requested. Mr. Gillespie did comment that we did not meet the requirements of 6.1 regarding the required landscape calculations. I'll be honest, I printed up a copy of 6.1, and I'm guessing that the two places where he feels we did not provide a calculation were on the number of, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gillespie, on the number of trees required for the site, and possibly whether or not we met the 25% required site landscape.
Yeah, there are 4 or 5 calculations within that section of the regulations regarding some of the landscaped island sizes, the internal parking areas, the perimeter landscaping. So you may or may not require or comply with all of those calculations. You just didn't provide us with the information to make that determination. So that was the point of that comment.
No, and I do appreciate this.
Yep.
Again, a little bit of honesty here, this is my first time working with your regulations and in front of both commissions, wetlands, and planning, so,
If it helps you, one commissioner, me, I'd like to see you try to meet them, because I think you've got a good-sized site, and I think you can probably, and you've done a lot with the rain gardens and all that. I would hope you could meet the landscaping requirements.
and I'm just going to go through and tell you how we can, very easily.
Okay, good.
Currently on the site, I have, between the existing trees and proposed, we have 13 trees, both between existing and proposed. Based upon the perimeter, we need 15 trees. So to stick 2 more trees on site wouldn't be a problem. In addition, as I stated, this back area is a vegetated area, so there are some trees back here. We'll take a little bit better look at that area, obviously, because it is vegetated, we didn't go in and locate every single tree.
That's one of my questions. What are you gonna do with it?
Well, this area,
Yeah.
it's gonna stay vegetated, and it's gonna be allowed to go natural. It'll be-
Totally natural?
Well, we'll be able to maintain it so that invasives and those kind of things don't grow, but as far, we're not gonna mow it, because we're not
Yeah,
gonna
I'm
plant
not,
grass or anything like that.
I don't mean mowing it. I just meant
If down trees.
clearing out some of the vines that might grow up and,
That is definitely something we will, we will do. With respect to the 25% landscaping between the rain gardens, the various mulch beds and planting beds that are shown, and the landscaped area along the side of the property, we meet the 25% requirement. I'll actually place the actual calculation on the plans, as part of the final conditions of approval. With respect to dimension of, dimensions for having certain size landscaping between parking and the sidelines, I believe the requirement is 5 feet. We exceed that. I think our smallest dimension is 8 feet. Obviously, on our southern side, since we have a common driveway, there is no perimeter landscaping on this particular side. And then, where we have the sewer easement, again, we can't really have landscaping in that area, because planting over a sewer easement is generally
wait a
frowned
minute.
upon.
you can't put landscaping on top of a sewage right away?
Trees and stuff.
Tree,
Trees
really?
and stuff. I mean, we can get some shrubs, but it's also
Shrubs,
where we
yeah.
have our infiltration trench. And if CLD Eversource lets us basically replace the existing gravel on their site and bring it back to a vegetated state, we'll be able to add some shrubs and bushes and kind of make up the difference in the two areas that we're asked to restore. So with respect to the landscaping, I do believe we can comply. It's just a matter of providing Mr. Gillespie with those actual calculations that he's requested. So I've gone through his comments, and as I said, we did address, and I believe there was a letter in the file where I did address the engineering review comment. So I'm going to turn it over to the commission for any other specific questions you'd like me to answer.
All right, so if you'll bear with me. So we just went through Peter's memo of April 26th. There are a couple others. There's an April 28th memo from the fire marshal, which, other than saying that the plans appear to meet the fire access issues, and then one from Don Moisa.
Oh, okay.
There are, did you receive a copy of the April 25th? So-
I have,
Basically for the engineering
yes,
office?
those are the ones that I did address with my revised plans that came in earlier today.
Thank you, okay. So that was where I was getting confused earlier. All right, so are there other pieces of correspondence? I don't believe so. So other questions from the commission before we, George,
Oh, what?
before we hand it over to the public comment?
Oh, yeah, few here. You use concrete and asphalt curbs, and in some places and others, is there a reason why? And
There is.
I'm sorry to notice something that small, but I did today, and I don't usually look at the plan that carefully.
Along the parking lot, we have a sidewalk. So what we do is we use an integrated concrete curb and sidewalk. Instead of building a sidewalk and then trying to put a bituminous curb up against it, it's easier to pour that combined concrete curb and sidewalk. So it's just in this section along these parking spaces along the north side of the building. The rest of the curbing throughout the site is bituminous.
Oh, okay.
So it's just in that one
I
section.
thought it was in two locations, but no, if you say that, fine, okay. Why I think I know the answer to it, but I want you to tell me. The one-way in and out, and the one-way out you had to do because of your neighbor to the south required it primarily, correct? Or did the town staff suggest it?
There's 2 reasons. One is because we don't have enough access around the back of the building to get a full 24-foot drive aisle between the building and the rear property line. We do have this easement area, but when we come out towards South Dean in this location, we have a ceiling peephole existing curb cut is to the south of that pole. So we have to maintain that curb cut because it's partially owned by our neighbor. So that's kind of where we came out. We held their improvements from their plan, and we avoided having to relocate the pole because that's a major expense for a project, especially a project of this size. So kind of a threefold, not having enough room behind the building to
Width.
get around it,
Potential, yeah.
CMP pole, and then maintaining our neighbor's improvements on his property.
You mentioned a railing. Explain it to me, which railing you're talking about. You mean the slope down to the back, you need railing along that side to get down to the back side, or what?
Mr. Gillespie's comment was he suggested that we consider making this sidewalk handicap accessible, basically from the employee parking lot to the building.
Oh.
We're not proposing any handicap parking over here, but it was his suggestion. And what I did is I checked the slope based upon the finished floor of the building to the slope of the parking lot at that location to see if I could comply with ADA regulations. I can comply with their 1 in 12 regulation. There are basically two.
Yep.
1 foot and 20, or 1 part per 20, you don't need a railing. When you get up to 1 part and 12, which is roughly a little over 8%, you need to have a railing. So
Oh,
if
okay.
we do
It's for the
put in a
handicap on that side.
accessible ramp on that side, we would have to install a railing. That's what my comment was.
And George, it
It's
was,
steep there, I
it,
admit.
the site as designed meets the handicapped code, so that additional ramp was just a suggestion. If the result is a railing, I would take my comment back and not require it.
If he meets it.
And it's for it's an employee parking area, so it's even less important.
Fine.
Is there any conversation about the, between Dunkin' Donuts and this parking lot? We had a conversation in another location where it was a Dunkin' Donuts along a drive-in where people get tired of waiting in line and either pull over. I mean, I realize you're planting arborvitaes. If, you know, a certain number of them die, some people just don't care. They'll just run right through. But are we trying to dissuade even further other than just using landscaping? Because we were talking about higher curbing, we were talking about a low fence in other locations. Was there any conversation there?
I think discouraging it is certainly the way to go, because the way it's being used now was not what we had in mind when we approved the plan. So I don't know what structurally you can do. You do have the rain garden, and the parking is designed for the stormwater to get to the rain garden,
Or
so.
even to dissuade people from parking in there, because that's what quite a few people do now.
Mhm.
Is people will park in the gravel lot and walk over
Yes.
if they have a larger truck.
Correct.
Because you can't maneuver through the Dunkin'. lot.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely going to create an issue for some of their patrons who might frequent this property, and I see it daily, so I guess it is what it is. So they're going to have to figure out some other accommodation. But yeah, I mean, the only other thing is maybe to put something behind the rain garden, but it's somebody else's property. It's getting real close to the property line there if you look at the survey. So I don't know what else could be done without getting permission from the owner to further restrict their parking. But
Right, and
And I did ask the owner, if this commission feels that it is a problem, because we do understand and we do acknowledge it, we could put possibly a split rail fence just off the property line on our side and kind of just more terminate it for a more visual barrier. 'Cause, anything would help, but, that's something that the commission is truly concerned about, to do that, to dissuade, their use of this property.
Yeah, I mean, it may be more of an issue in the other location because there's just a vast sea of.
and there's no bypass lane. This has the ability, if somebody sees the queue and it's coming out to the Celestine Highway, they can go through the main parking lot. There's a stop sign where they can then go through and get out of the property without waiting in the line. So they have an alternative here that they didn't have in that other. Once you're in that line down there, you're stuck, and that's why people jump the curb. So Here it was better designed.
You know, I don't know the site well enough to know that fact, but I feel better about that because, quite frankly, I'd ask this property owner to go to some extreme.
No.
And even if the split rail fence is not that, it's not that extreme, but the bottom line is, if they're coming over this side from the other lot, you should have every right to tell that property owner to fix it from their side. You're gonna put up something, whether it's the arborvitae's, et cetera, you have every reasonable expectation that their patrons aren't knocking your trees down.
Maybe don't plant little
Ju-
baby arborvitae's.
Jim?
Yeah, I would think the property owner, as this evolves, once he's making a sizable investment, whatever measures he's gonna have to take, whether he has to come in and get approval for an additional fence later on, or whatever he needs to do, I'm sure he'll figure it out as this evolves. It might not be a problem.
Yeah.
Maybe people just be like, hey, here's a brand new building, I'm not gonna go in here. Or maybe he'll just have to take whatever corrective measures. I'm sure he has there's a couple alternatives for him.
Yolanda?
Just a couple questions about your rain garden. I don't know if you provided any calculations to the engineer and to the staff. I was just wondering how you size those rain gardens?
Basically, we size them for a 1-inch rainfall, nothing too spectacular. We were not going for stormwater retention, detention, purely water quality. So when you're not doing it for detention purposes, that reservoir underneath doesn't have to be too deep. So,
How
we're
deep?
only talking a 12-inch reservoir under all these. So about 40% based upon the boys is what we can use. And they're about anywhere from maybe about half foot to a foot deep. So if they have enough to handle the runoff based on what they're intended to handle.
Would you say that most, if not all, I took a look at the grading roughly. Would you say that most of the site actually does drain towards those rain gardens and towards the gravel in the back?
The northerly parking lot is designed to grade to this corner to get into this rain garden. If it doesn't get into the rain garden, it will get into our infiltration trench. This parking lot, a little grading into this steep portion of it will be picked up by this level spreader and get into this rain garden. The rest will make it down, hit the curb and come down into the infiltration trench. Granted, this one's up in the front with very, not much flows to it. The intention of this was to take as much roof runoff as we could, even clean water, but still to run it through there and to help. And then we've also graded this part of the front yard so that no water goes into the state right of way, but we keep it on site and process it and treat it with grading.
Okay.
So that was the whole
Good.
concept about the grading.
Okay. One thing I didn't see was a detail of the rain garden in the drawings. Were you intending to provide that? Was that omitted?
We can definitely add it. So far staff haven't asked for it, but I can definitely add one. Very generic design that we went with, both with plants and everything, but yes, we can add
Okay.
that. And we'll put it right on either the site landscaping plan if there's space, or we'll add it to the detail
Yeah.
sheet.
Well, I think it'll clarify the construction of it. Some people put mulch on the bottom of their rain gardens, some people put other things in there, so it'd be good if you had a detail to show how you intend to construct it.
We'll definitely do that. Thank you.
So I'll point out that the record includes a report by yourself, Juliano, a drainage report?
Yeah, the drainage report is done by myself, yes.
Yep. All right. Other questions before we turn it over to the public?
More here. One of them I want to address to Peter, as it relates here, as well as a couple more over here. Peter, and that's what I get for being on here for so long in this commission. In the old days, I remembered this site, you remember when we were doing the hot dog stands in there and stuff a few years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And this is supposedly some kind of a right-of-way, but I didn't know you talked about MDC right-of-way along the backside. I thought it was out front here. Is there any old right-of-way issues to go with that or not?
Actually, it's not a right-of-way. That is their property line. It's an L-shaped configuration. I attempted to research the entire history of how it was all carved out, but the property was subdivided into 5 lots at one particular time, so, and that's the way,
Out to the north side of the building, the new building, right? Yeah.
I believe so,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
so that is not a right-of-way in the back, except it is a sewer
Paving
easement.
Yeah, but it's an easement.
There's an easement, but that narrow portion of the property in the back is owned by the applicant.
Yeah, right.
It's not an easement.
It's not an
They own the property.
Okay.
And the utility company has an easement over their property.
Okay, it's kind of wondering, going through my head, all that stuff.
Mr. Hughes might have the history on this. Mr. Hughes might have some history for you.
Go that far back?
George, you want the history?
No, I need the help on my memory back there.
No, and that's where he used to store, the dump trucks and the oil trucks in that piece of property.
Right. Yeah, I think, you remember all that, yeah. Design review, cover this? And
Yes, they did. There was a note in my comments. They do, I think, want to one more time see the final architecture. They had some observations, which I think the applicant is taking under advisement, but they want to look at it one more time. But they did approve what was submitted. Yes.
Okay. And no real strong feelings about the rendering.
I think they were very favorably disposed. The applicant did provide a sample board of some of the materials that they're considering in the building, a combination of stone and et cetera. So if you want more information, I'm sure they'd be happy to share that with you.
Yeah, one last item. Over here on some of the notes, do the mechanical and condenser units on the roof show up?
They're not going to be on the they're not going to be on the roof. They indicated they're going to try and put them in the back, and a condition
Down? Yeah.
which is down gradient. So if
That's the answer.
that's really what I wanted to hear as well. So
Okay, thank you.
In reviewing the notes for the meeting, the history was a gas station at one point.
yes.
And there seemed to be a question, maybe I read it wrong, that there was no definitive answers whether or not there were any tanks still remaining in the ground.
That was the fire marshal's comments. His files did not include a great deal of information about the property. I'm sure the applicants, as they are negotiating with the present owner, have investigated that, and maybe somebody could step forward and respond to that about the cleanup and whether additional cleanup is necessary.
I'd like to know that there are no tanks and there's no problem there before a building is built.
We had updated information that looks like the tanks were removed, and we did forward that, I think, to our contractor as well as to our attorney, so that the seller can address it. But we have completed phase 1, and we're working on our phase 2 right now, which should confirm that those tanks were in fact
Yeah,
removed
just
and
wanna-
environmental are clean.
There should be some confirmation for the record, that's all. It's been.
Tom?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure about the propriety of me asking questions since I arrived a bit late, but it was fairly close to the beginning of the presentation. I just have a quick concern or question relating to the absence of the demolition plan and your desire not to have one. And my concern kind of dovetails with the concerns about the presence or absence of former oil storage tanks. Is there any requirement in your plans for any of the debris from the demolition to be tested for hazardous materials to make sure that the debris can be safely placed as construction debris as opposed to any hazmat materials that might be found in it?
Standard practice would be to test materials. I'm not envisioning, based upon being on site, that too much of the material will be reusable for construction-based material. Some of the pavement might be able to be ground up and used for base material, but it will have to be tested. There will, during the process of construction and the removal of the material, it will have to be tested. If it can be used, it'll be used. If not, it will be disposed of in accordance with whatever state regulations, state and federal regulations require, depending upon how it tests.
Okay. My recollection is that the kinds of tests that carried on for debris that's left over after demolition is colloquially called T-clipped tests, and basically it's laboratory examination of some of the debris to make sure that, to discover what substances are in that debris. I would request that you include a comment or a note in your plans, if we're not going to require a demolition plan, that you have such tests a copy of such tests forwarded to town staff for purposes of our files.
And that, quite frankly, is taken care of in the Phase 2 testing that you're talking about, right? So you're going to characterize the material on site so that you know what it is you're touching before you touch it, right? Okay.
Already done, it was clean, and that addresses the inside material of the building. They're currently doing the Phase 2 right now, which the bank is in contact with, and the Phase 2 is kind of going in more depth into whether those tanks were removed or not, so it's a more in-depth look at the property and the soil content. We did soil coring as well with the Phase 2, so we're waiting on those results.
Okay, your phase 2
Thank you.
will provide that information.
Okay. Thank you. Les,
Could we just have her name for the record?
thank you. Your name?
I'm sorry, Dr. Monica Danich.
Monica Dienich?
Yes.
Thank you. Dan, did you have a question? Dan, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah.
You're all set?
I'm all set.
All right. So if we could move on to the public part of this dialogue. We're going to have one at a time come up, and if you would introduce yourself, name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Paul Knock. I live at 71 Stillman Walk. My home is directly behind where this building is going to be constructed. And basically, my concern and the concern of my neighbors is related to noise and light. We've looked at the plans, and we see that there's going to be an exercise area, approximately 20 by 20 on the south side of the building. And we'd like to know if the use of that area is going to be restricted to the normal operating hours of the hospital, which is between 9 and 6. And if so, we'd like to know if it's going to be used by multiple animals at a time, whether it's going to create a situation where there's going to be dogs barking and playing and so on and so forth. That's one concern. The second concern is that the lower level of the building, which is the farthest to the east, is going to be approximately 150 feet from my bedroom windows. So I'm concerned about the boarding facility that's going to be located in that part of the building. It doesn't appear on the drawings that I've seen that there's going to be any outside runs, that it's going to be completely internal. And if that's the case, I'd like to know if the building is going to be to the soundproofing standards where those sounds of barking or howling dogs during the evening will exit the building or be contained by the building. The third area we're concerned about is the location of the dumpster, which is going to be approximately 100 feet from the bedroom window of my neighbor. We want to, if it's at all possible, ensure that the servicing of that dumpster takes place between normal operating hours, unlike Dunkin' Donuts, where they're out there using it at 4:30 in the morning and slamming the dumpsters open and closed, waking us up. So if that dumpster can be, if the service can be restricted to the daylight hours, we would significantly appreciate it. And lastly, because of the demolition and the construction as it's designed, we're going to be exposed a little more than we have been to the Silestine Highway. It's noise and the lights in the parking lots. And we was wondering if the owners, as part of their landscaping plan, could put some kind of a landscaping barrier along Beaver Brook. You know, I know there was some talk about actually clearing some of the vines there, but those vines are very helpful to us in protecting us from noise. Maybe a row of green giant arborvitaes or something to that effect would be also greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just, we'll have the applicant speak to those issues, but I'll get everybody's on the record first, kind of thing? Thanks. Very good. Yes, please join us.
Hello, my name is Judy Arthman, and I live at 26 Stillman Walk. And I just had a few items I wanted to add to Mr. Knox's comments. Since this is an animal hospital, I'm assuming there are surgical units in the hospital in which there are oxygen and other chemicals that are stored. My question to you is, will the hospital be staffed overnight in the event of a fire? Or will the animals and the chemicals be left unattended at nighttime? The second question I had was in regards to the dumpster. I believe you said that the dumpster would be surrounded by fencing. What is the fencing going to be made of, and will it be strong enough to keep rodents out? We all know that animal feces, when left open, are breeding grounds for rodents, and that's a concern for us being on the other side of the brook. I also wanted to know how you intend to dispose of animal parts that are removed during surgery. Will these also be put in your dumpster? Will there be any rotting of materials? And will there be any odors that we can anticipate on the other side of the brook? We have one animal hospital on the end of our street, and now we're going to have another animal hospital across the brook from us. There's concern about your clients taking their animals, allowing them to defecate anywhere else on your property, and not picking it up. We have people coming from one animal hospital, walking down our street with their dogs, allowing them to urinate and defecate on our property, and then they walk away, and we don't know who they are, and it causes a problem for us. Will this be doubled by your presence on the other side of the brook? Or will you have staff out there to clean up after your patients leave so that it won't be left there and accumulate? And that's it.
Thank you very much. Other folks wishing to speak at the moment? All righty, if the applicant could join us again, and those are some very fine questions. They all seem to be primarily about operating, and interesting, we just forgot to really kind of get into that with you. So let's talk about your operations in general.
Okay. I'll try to address these questions. If there's a specific question the commission has to follow up on what the public said, and I can answer about the operations, I'll ask one of the doctors to address that specifics. Basically, with respect to noise and light, as this commission knows, with respect to the light requirements, we have to have 0-foot candles at the property line, and we will comply with that requirement. We will have full cutoff light fixture both within the parking lot and on the building. I do understand the neighbors' concerns, but again, this area here, existing vegetation and wetlands to the east, which separates us, same, and then the area of property we own, we're not planning to clear that out or do anything with it again. My statement was to leave that in a natural state, allow it to stay in a natural state, to give them that buffer, basically to discourage people from going in that direction.
Right. So
It's definitely not the intention to allow the people who come here to use that area for the pets. That would not be allowed. It would be basically, dissuaded from doing it.
who actually owns that? It's a 100-foot buffer. It's 100 feet wide. So your building is probably 20 feet in from the property line?
We're 20, the back corner is the closest corner, almost 22 feet from our property line, and this is another 100 feet. So
So
we're 122 feet from
other people's property
from
lines.
from the property line, let's say common property line, and then based upon the town's GIS mapping, I would say they're 20, 25, maybe 30
Something.
feet off the property line. So they are relatively close.
Yep.
But they're, as the gentleman said, it's about 150 feet from our building to
To
theirs.
their building.
And it is vegetated in there. Obviously, in the winter months, some of that deciduous vegetation won't be alive. So there may be some views and stuff, but as far as noise and everything, you know, the intent is to be a good neighbor and not impact these residents in
Right.
a negative sense.
So I'm going to actually ask Peter to help. What has been our success rate in having other property owners landscape CLNP property? I mean, we've discussed that in the past in a number of other applications. And they, you know, because I don't know that this property owner has the answer
Right.
tonight, but
Yeah.
we do.
Well, they do, obviously, they're concerned about, you know, vegetation that's going to grow so as to impact their utility service. So, however, I think there is a happy medium somewhere in there that I'm sure they would agree to some, you know, combination of things there. And also, some of that property is in the control of the applicant as well. So maybe a combination of a couple of things. Maintaining what's there and then supplementing that. You do, as part of your landscaping requirements, have buffer requirements between commercial and residential properties. So that's certainly an appropriate condition to apply, and the applicants could then reach out to the power and utility companies and see what they can come up with. So I think a general condition to that effect with some further review would certainly be in order.
Thank you.
Additionally, with respect to the question about multiple animals in the exercise yard, and the answer to that question is no. It's to take a specific animal out there, exercise it, and then bring it back. They're not left out there to play. It's not a doggy daycare. It's a totally, that's not what this facility is for. There are no external runs.
So clarify for me, so that means we don't have, except for overnight stays for, you know, doctor care or, you know, it's not an overnight facility. You don't have doggy daycare here.
Well, not doggy daycare where someone comes, drops their dog off during the day, picks them up, not for just the daycare. Crate Escape, for example, is a chain that does it. That's not what this facility is. This is a medical facility. Dogs will be boarded here. There is boarding along with this, I believe, correct? Yep, okay.
The boarding, I think, if I can ask, wasn't that in the basement area towards, away from the back wall, inside the lower level? So it's not on an outside wall, meaning you won't hear any noise next to a window that might be open, or,
Correct.
and that would be offset also with the HVAC that would appropriately handle the facility, including the basement area where I think the boarding layout was. Is that correct? You won't have any boarding outside?
No, the boarding is more in the inwood of the basement itself, for the dogs.
So at least help me with your name and address.
My name is Grace Joy, go over there. My name is Grace Tanner. I live at 77 Stillman Walk, and I live right next door to the Knox, and this will be exactly in the back of my house. Even if you're boarding dogs, the dogs do have to go outside, especially on weekends, so there will be dogs, I mean, in and out, I would assume. You can't board a dog and keep them inside for 24 hours. So that would be a concern, especially in the evenings, because the vet that's at the end of our street, I have a little chihuahua, so I'm walking around a lot, and I hear dogs all the time when they're being boarded, especially on weekends when someone only comes for a couple of hours. So that is a concern of mine. And I don't think anybody's mentioned, but I think one of the other concerns of mine is the kinds of facilities that are being put up in those areas. It really has an effect, I think, on the value of our homes too. That may not be anything anybody cares about but me, but so I think it's very important that we make sure that if this is going to be a go, that it really impacts us as little as possible, so that, you know, we have very nice homes, and it'd be a shame for them to become like the houses next to the vet. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we do have overnight boarding, and they'll be there over the weekends. You're going to describe to us where they are within the structure of the building?
Correct. This is the lower level on the lower right-hand corner of the map. These are the two doors that access that
Outside.
12-foot one-way in the back. Basically, the dog boarding is on this wall. So cat boarding is here, grooming, laundering, food prep is in this area, and the indoor exercise area. And then the dog boarding is actually farther away from the back wall. So it's not against the back wall. And as far as any soundproofing, obviously the building will meet soundproofing requirements and code requirements so that dampens and minimizes any sound that travels from inside the building out.
So I will try and follow up with some questions that kind of, finish this issue, which is how are they exercised and allowed to relieve themselves? Where is that happening? And can you speak to, because I don't know exactly, how does the other facility differ in terms of how they house their animals versus here, if others are hearing the other ones? Can you speak to that?
I'm gonna defer to the doctors, because they'll know exactly more what their operation is, and they may know what that other veterinarian practice is, so if you want to just.
As far as I know, they don't have a kennel license. They are hospital only, and they do medical boarding. So if there is an animal that is sick, i.e., for example, a diabetic dog that they cannot board at like someplace like West Friends, then they allow their medical patients to board there. So they're not a kennel, they don't have a kennel license, so I'm not sure what the barking dogs are there. But maybe because they're just a hospital and not a true kennel, maybe they don't have the soundproofing that we're proposing for ours, because we are planning on soundproofing it, because we do have a kennel license.
I was hoping you were going to say they have outside facilities. Did you know? Is it different than this? They do? So maybe that's the difference here. This has nothing outside. So how do the dogs get exercised and relieved when they are here? Where is that, up in that exercise area, the 20 by 20?
Just be let out into the exercise pen to go potty, and then they would be brought back inside.
Okay.
They're not gonna be out there unsupervised, they're not gonna be out there for long periods of
Yep.
time. They would only be brought outside, 3 times a day to go relieve themselves, and then brought back in,
And-
which is currently what we do at our location. We're right across the street from an apartment complex, and we have a kennel license and a boarding facility, and we take our dogs out 3 times a day on a leash to go potty, and we have had 0 complaints from any of the apartment residents about noise.
Okay, so operating hours? So these dogs will be here all weekend, so someone is on staff here 24 hours, 7 days a week?
So we're open Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 9 a.m. to 6, Wednesday, 8 to 8, Saturday, 9 to 2, and Sunday, 9 to 12. And then staff come in the evenings on Saturday and Sunday to allow the pets to go outside or to take care of cats or whatever that are in the facility.
Thank you. Tom?
With respect to your internal noise attenuation efforts, I presume that's going to be achieved through, basic insulation of the facility? You're having both wall and ceiling insulation throughout? Is that correct?
Turn over to the building person.
Derek Doring with Tuition Construction.
Could you help us out with your name?
Derek Doring.
Derek?
Eric.
Eric.
Yeah. Tuition Construction, we specialize in building animal hospitals around the country. In this particular case, the STC ratings are what you're asking for, the sound transfer class. In this space, in the lower level, we're gonna have concrete walls. There's a number of different ways to achieve the sound abatement that you're looking for. Normal construction would give us, somewhere in the neighborhood of an STC 50, not to get into a bunch of technical details, but that wall, the one wall that you would see that would be built out of framed material, all the rest of it's gonna be your poured concrete or concrete block wall. That wall is normally done through a combination of a staggered stud and drywall scenario with woven bat insulation in between. That gives you a higher STC rating, which mitigates that sound. And I would be honestly shocked if anybody could hear anything outside of that place. Not to mention within a noise ordinance that you already would have in place. So, inside the building, you don't have an issue. It would just be the containing of the sound of the animal on the outside of the building, which would be out in the exercise yard, which is gonna be out one at a time, which minimizes that, and it's fenced.
I understand that there's, that there's not an exact correlation between an STC rating and, our ratings for for thermal insulation. But my experience is if you have wall insulation that maintains the R28 rating and a ceiling insulation that maintains an R32 rating, for heat transfer, that will attenuate a heck of a lot of sound, either coming from being able to hear inside from the outside and vice versa, from the inside to the outside. So, that's kind of what I was looking for.
You're right, there is not a direct correlation. They don't necessarily transfer because it's really done through testing and rating. And sound transfer happens through sound energy, and that energy needs to be broken to be able to mitigate the sound. So actually having a wall with more insulation may give you slightly better sound transfer rating on the wall, but it's actually the staggering of the studs that doesn't allow the transfer of the sound energy to happen, which also means you have to seal the top, seal the bottom. There's a bunch of things that are associated with it that go way beyond just insulation. But you're right, insulation is kind of a component of it.
And what would those insulation ratings be?
Well, I can't tell you what the R value would be because it's really a sound transfer class that we're dealing with here, but what I just described to you is a staggered stud wall, which is 2x4 wall, 2x4 wall. The studs offset each other, and then you weave that insulation in between. That's what mitigates the majority of sound you see like an STC 55 to 60.
So very well soundproofed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of what we do in the industry, is we do not want people to have to listen to the dog. We don't want it to happen within the building, much less we got cats boarding right next door. We have to be concerned about them as well.
I can only assume that this facility is going to be more of a state-of-the-art facility than the existing one. And I think to put neighbors at ease, and I think maybe some of the members of this commission, we have the benefit of having a history. This is not the only facility in town. Perhaps staff can look into neighbor complaints, that type of thing, so that we could get a history and understanding that this is going to be more state-of-the-art of what's happening right now. I think that would probably put a lot of people at ease.
Okay. I also like the idea of making sure that somehow access to the neighborhood is precluded from this site by patrons who might choose to walk their dog while they're waiting 15 minutes for their appointment, that kind of thing.
You can put in a brook. Just a quick comment.
There's a book,
Well, thank you for staying in town. I had a lot of choices to a lot of towns you could have moved in, but definitely appreciate you staying in town. That's my personal opinion. I think the property's been blighted for 10 years, so I think this is absolutely an improvement to Celestine Highway. Aesthetically, I think, this is going to be, I think, a beautiful building. I think when it's all said and done. I think it's a service that's important to the town. I think you've been a good neighbor. I think we would have heard complaints if you hadn't. I think you'll be a good neighbor at this particular facility or location. Site-wise, I think you've done a good job with stormwater quality. I like you've consolidated or minimized the curb cuts on Celestine Highway, which is another thing that we look for. I think overall you put a lot of detail and quality in this, and I would say I'm in favor for it. I think if you'd like a site demolition plan, I think you should probably get that to the town. That's just my comments.
So there's one additional topic that I don't think we hit that came out in the questions, and that is the dumpster fence type.
Basically, in general, a dumpster would be either a stockade wooden fence, which I personally don't like because they get damaged too easily, but I would prefer to see a chain link fence with privacy slats, so it is actually almost a solid enclosure. There will be dumpsters in here. We will work with the refuse pickup company, because I completely understand the neighbor's complaint about Dunkin' Donuts pickup at 4 a.m. and how annoying that is. So we will work with whoever picks up the trash here to get them to come during normal business hours. And that will definitely be something that we work with them on. with respect to what materials get placed in there, obviously medical waste can't be dumped in a dumpster. It's biomedical waste. It has to be handled appropriately. I believe from my own vet that I go to that all that material is stored inside the building and then taken away by a special professional company. It just doesn't get put in the dumpster. So that the neighbors will not have to be worried about. And obviously the dumpsters will be covered and latched, so that'll minimize any odors, any problem with animals. Both doctors and the staff in general are really looking to be good neighbors, and they're gonna do whatever they can to help out the neighbors and minimize the impact on them. So I think I touched on all the dumpster and refuse areas, and Dr. Monica talked about the staff and overnight and weekend staff. So I think that is everything.
Okay,
Two in the audience.
okay. Very good. Come on up and join us. Thank you for a moment to give the mic to them.
My name is Jim McRae. I live at 65 Stillman Walk, which will be backing up on the... I still think that the case of the soundproofing was dodged here. It came down to, it's going to be according to code. Now, down at the end of the street, where AA is, once one dog starts barking, they all start barking. And there are occasions where, I mean, I live right in back of where the driveway is going to be. I can hear them from down there. And the people that live in the first couple of houses, they hear it all the time. So the boarding is for what, 9 or 10 dogs? You have 9 or 10 dogs in there, one starts barking. They all start barking. So, I mean, according to code means any building that's put up, is that according to code? Is that what they're talking about, according to code? Not additional soundproofing?
So I think you heard that they are putting more soundproofing than a normal home would receive, because internal to their operations, they want soundproofing from the other animals that are in adjacent rooms themselves. And besides that, I think I heard, because I don't know personally, that they house the animals outside at the other facility where this one doesn't have those. So those two things separate in my mind so far, anyways, the answer being that it should be better here than what may exist at AAA. AAA? Double A?
Double A.
Double A. So, right. But thank you for your comment. Would you like to join us?
Barbara Mead, 54 Stillman Walk. I'm on the other side of the street, but I am concerned, as my neighbors are, about the noise situation. And as we all have said, the noise from AA, you hear it every day. On the weekends, when people aren't there, you hear the dogs. I walk by there all the time and you hear the dogs, whether they're, and I don't think they're outside, not in the winter. If they are boarded, they aren't going to be outside in the winter. You talked about some kind of, maybe if you call it sound barrier with a natural, having the trees or shrubs or something like that. In the winter, there's a clear line right through to Dunkin' Donuts and everything else over there. Yes, the very unsightly, I'll call them weeds, vines, whatever you want to call them, they grow up in the summer now. But when they're gone, they're gone. So I would like to see something more permanent than just letting nature come back and take over alongside of the brook there. I would like to see something else, something tall. The poles, the utility poles that are there are humongous. They're way, way, way up high. They could certainly put in some kind of shrubbery up at 10 feet to help make a barrier. And my other question is, I don't think it was readdressed after we made comments about the HVAC units and the compressor and such. Are those inside the building or outside? It's my understanding if they were outside, it was the back of the building where the houses are. So to hear those compressors running all the time, that's my comments.
Thank you. Not seeing anybody else? Would you clarify your responses for those issues?
Again, I'm gonna defer to Tim about the soundproofing. Let me, first of all, talk about, the winter months and landscaping. Obviously, this is the engineering department and, the town in general has asked us to contact CMP to, remove the gravel areas on their property. If we were granted permission, which again, I don't think would be a problem, it just may be a long process. We could, as part of that, plant some evergreen shrubs just over the property line to give a more winter barrier, a natural winter barrier. And if we do something like arborvitae or something similar, we can get the height so that they can have both a visual and natural sound barrier. I don't think that would be too much to really ask of the applicant. I think it would go a long way for both sides.
Compressors?
Oh, with respect to the compressors, I'm in a building as well, and, you know, compressors running all the time. Again, they're they're newer style compressors. They're only gonna run really as needed. I don't think the noise from those are going to be continuous. Tim, you might, or Eric, you may have a better feel.
It's no different than any other commercial business on the street. I mean, we're shielding them and doing what we can to keep them away from visibility of the road, and, I mean, the compressors have to be outside. I don't know if there's a different standard that would be held for a veterinary hospital versus any other business on there, but that would be,
When you say shielding, you just mean from the road, not just in terms of an enclosure? Okay.
Where are they going to be located?
So, yeah, that is what they, can you point that out? It is on the back. It is on the back between the building and Stillman Drive.
I pulled up the landscaping plan because they will be probably in this general location, because that's where our utilities are coming in. We are planting behind them between where they'd be located and the residence. So we're gonna have vegetation on the easterly side of those units planned already. So visually, they shouldn't be able to see them, and then that'll also help with the noise. And then, as I said, if and when we get permission from CMP to plant, we do plant some evergreen shrubs just on the border, just over the border. That will add another layer of protection for the residents on,
So he was pointing to the northeast corner. There's a corner of the building there, and it's gonna be behind a garden.
So they'll be in this location, because that's where our utilities are entering the building. You're up here roughly 150 feet away. We have already proposed plantings in between that location and your residence. So they're gonna be shielded by this vegetation from yours. And then, of course, you'll have the natural vegetation that's up in this area. And then, if and when we get permission from CMP to remove this gravel on the property, we can put some evergreen shrubs along there to give you a secondary, actually tertiary border. And that one will, by evergreen shrubs, will also be giving you some protection in the winter months.
So the compressors will butt against the building?
They'll be up against the building,
Okay.
probably not right up against the building, because I think there has to be a certain distance off the building for air circulation. Yeah, but we will get them as close to that corner as possible, and then, as I said, we are planning to plant between the building and the right of way, and then again, we can do that once I say to you, we're going to do a tertiary level of protection.
I had agreed with the gentleman who said that this would be a welcome change to that site, what's there.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think as a follow-up to what was just said, we're in a general business zone. There's a lot more other uses that could be utilized, other coffee, fast food type of places, a lot of more traffic flow, drive-throughs coming through, headlights coming and going, more 24/7 operations, be it gas stations. There's a variety of other much more intense uses. So I also agree with my colleague and your comments too. It does fit to some capacity and to a high degree.
Jim?
Given that I'm quite familiar with this site, I pointed out to my fellow Commissioner Oikel before, the extended piece of property to the east, which is actually over Beaver Brook, that was a home, if you look back in the zoning, there was actually more than 8 dump trucks and oil trucks that were there, and those trucks rolled out at 4 o'clock in the morning, well before Stillman Walk was built. So if you go back to pre-existing use, and the gas station that was there was open almost 24 hours a day, when I believe Walt Favory owned it. And, he had a really big business there. They also plowed snow out of there, so when it was snowing, they were operating out of there 24 hours a day. Center Trucking operated out of there. So the impact of what these folks are proposing as to what has happened there before, granted, where you lived was a 24-hour trucking terminal, Dallas and Mavis, at that point. But a pre-existing use, when you go back in the record, was gone on there. And maybe someone might, this is a much lower impact. And to speak to like the kenneling, it seems like it's a state of the art, because I'm assuming when you're operating, you probably need a rather quiet environment when you're operating on an animal, if you're gonna build a building from scratch as opposed to retrofitting a building. Just guessing. There's a welcome change.
Other questions for the applicant? So this is a public hearing. We need to assess whether whether we think we have all the information we need at this point, and if so, address the public hearing. So do you, well, I guess, I've heard a number of issues, a handful of issues, that in my mind anyways, could be addressed through conditions that require staff to continue to work with the applicant to resolve.
I've highlighted 5 or 6
So
concerns.
do you agree, from what you've heard, that you're comfortable with, this being a subsequent to some action you could follow through?
Sure, I think, with a carefully crafted motion with a series of conditions, that could be done with the understanding that if they can't be resolved with staff, that the commission would, come back and review the issues and obviously arbitrate if there's any stalemates on that. So with those caveats, I think, obviously you've got a bunch of comments from the town engineer. You've got my comments, which require some additional information to be provided to staff with the various changes to the plans. I don't think any of them are insurmountable. The critical thing is for you to be comfortable primarily with the parking. I think the lighting can be addressed based on the plan that I've seen. There really shouldn't be a lighting problem on the abutting properties. We just need the documentation to prove that. The landscaping calculations, I think they can do those calculations and come up with a revised plan that addresses those. The demolition plan, whether they provide it to me, they're going to have to provide it to the building inspector and the fire marshal anyway, so that plan is going to need to be provided at some point. I think the record reflects their commitment to address some of the other issues. For example, the sound details can be provided at the time of a building permit so that we can make sure the staggered stud walls and the battens and all of that are included in those details. So I don't think any of the issues that are still on the table couldn't be handled with a bunch of conditions that staff looks at, and then if we can't resolve them, we come back here. But I just think making sure you feel that the parking as provided is sufficient to satisfy the demand. So just for the record, when AA came in, I think we used an office calculation. We do not have a parking ratio in your regulations for veterinary hospitals. So when that situation arises, you can decide what the sufficient amount of parking is for a particular use. So I think that's really the only issue that, and you probably need to just make sure that gets in the record. And then there was one request for a waiver on the parking in the front yard. That is probably also should be in the motion.
That should have been in the form of a motion if it wasn't you.
If it wasn't me. 10 minutes later.
Well said.
Well done. Second.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Is there any discussion on that issue? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? All right, now I'm going to make a clarification because we did get 2 additional players.
I'll sit down.
Thank you very much. So there are still just 9 of us. Tom did come in, but relatively early in that, so Rich is sitting out. Right? So 9 positives. All right. So, a motion on the application.
I'll make a motion to approve application number 1904-16Z for a special permit in accordance to 5.2-1 of the zoning regulation for the demolition new construction of a veterinary hospital and associated with improvements on the Southstein Highway with the conditions as we've discussed. I'm referencing
As Peter just said.
24 bullets in Peter's memo, giving special focus to the site demolition plan, item number 3, to be to the satisfaction of the town staff, inclusive of tank removal confirmation with a phase 2. I'd like to also include item number, confirmation by Peter for the handicap parking sign location, item number 6, I think that was, yes. Number 8 was the zoning table to be clarified. Item number 10, to consider the handicap ramp at employee sidewalk area, again, to be the satisfaction of the town staff that I think was discussed by Peter in regard to that rail. I think that the modification of a waiver on item number 12 was submitted, so my motion will be to, the plans propose 2 parking spaces in the front yard setback application should request the modification waiver, so I would include that in my motion. Item number 16, to identify the location of any required HVAC mechanical or condenser units, which I think we've already touched on. With respect to the site landscaping plan, 18, 19, and 20 would be to the satisfaction of the town staff, inclusive of a buffer strip and consideration of a split rail fence. Item number 21.
Well,
The
so
rear
can we,
buffer strip?
yeah,
or the
can we stay on that one for just a moment and do this collectively? The rear,
Rear buffer.
so some,
Rear buffer.
right, you were talking about the side buffer?
No, I meant the rear buffer.
You did, okay. Because the landscaping plan on the,
Dumpster's gonna be split rail?
No.
No? I thought
All
it
right.
was the white.
The consideration of the sideline would be. the
Between
split-
Duncan and,
Between Dunkin' Donuts.
okay,
But the buffer would be in the back, towards the rear.
okay.
I did circle number 21 with the agreement with close Jensen Miller and the abutting property. I think that was touched on also. And just as important as item number 22, with the satisfaction of the town staff in regard to the site lighting. I think that was clarified very thorough and very complete. And then the exterior elevations with the height and the labeling of this site would also have to be inclusive to the satisfaction of the town staff.
Second.
Okay, so there,
Anything else, Peter? All right,
so coordinating with CLNP for the cleaning up of the sites in the back, right?
Definitely. Part of that buffer
part of the buffer.
would be
That's your,
understanding that the cleanup is there.
okay.
So yeah, just, yeah, in summary, so my understanding is that, you know, it's subject to a variety of conditions, many of which are contained within the April 26th, 2016 staff memo from the Planning Department. Additionally, the April 28th, 2016 staff memo from the Fire Marshal regarding fire lanes and also the underground environmental cleanup. And then lastly, April 25th, memorandum from the engineering department, which has a series of 18 plan revisions, many of which are just sort of minor and technical in nature. And there are several waivers one waiver being granted for the parking in the front yard. And then you emphasized, obviously, a number of those that had higher concern regarding demolition plan, regarding the landscaping issues, and the need for a lighting photometric plan. So, and then just for the record, I did hear the neighbors, and it's obviously not related to this one, but I'll contact Dunkin' Donuts about the trash pickup, just so, let's see if we can do something about that. And obviously, it's not related to this application. So I think that covers.
So I had a couple other notes that the applicant will make available the soundproofing details.
The look at the technical STC ratings and the details regarding the staggered stud wall designed for the lower basement level for sound abatement. Yep.
And Tom has a question.
Yeah, just a clarification with respect to the handling of item number 8 on Peter's memorandum, which is the zoning table, and his comment about the parking waiver may therefore be required, quote unquote. As I understand, the applicant had indicated that it really did not want to change their parking plans. So is a waiver in fact now required or not required for our approval?
So I think two different issues. One is a number of parking spaces required, and Peter is suggesting that we'd be comfortable with the proposed 25. There are 2 of them, however, as shown, that are within the setback, which is something you wouldn't normally want to do, and they're asking for a waiver of that. So of the 25.
Okay, so that waiver.
That waiver was part of the motion.
That waiver is part, yeah, I understand that, I made a note of that, okay.
All right. Was there other?
So in fact, for number 8, I think that particular waiver is on a different number, but for number 8, there is no waiver that we are required.
No, I think it's just the record should reflect that the commission has determined that the parking proposed in this plan is sufficient for the veterinary hospital and kennel use.
I'd be, more comfortable if there was that kind of notation in our record.
So thank you. I was misunderstanding your point, yes. And so you guys made a motion? Are you both agree with that thought process, that you're comfortable with the 25 in terms of account? Okay. So we have a motion, a second, some additional edits by Peter. Any other thoughts? Okay. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay. And once again, Rich is not part of that. All right.
I'll assume before you break ground.
Yeah, right. When you start demolish.
tomorrow if they could.
Probably want to find out what's in the ground before you break it.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you for participating, folks. All right. Item 3.2. Are they still here? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, perhaps our zoning enforcement officer should follow up or other appropriate town official on the AA kennels.
George and I had a concern about the AA veterinary being loud and being a distraction to the neighborhood. Is that a zoning enforcement issue
We will.
that could be attended to?
Gonna have him look into that.
Okay.
Other place.
It's worth
they'll
checking
like
out.
to come down
Thank
here
you.
and get their testing devices out.
All right. Yeah, it's not that loud.
Yeah, get the
Annoy 'em
cops out.
again.
Do you need that?
I think we might need it, if you could just leave it. Yeah, that'd be great, thank you.
It's a good idea.
All right, item 3.2, application 1905-16-Z. Andy Golka. Fifth Avenue Motel, seeking a site plan and design review in accordance with section 5.2 permitted uses to construct a single-family residential addition to the existing structure, 1695 Berlin Turnpike, west side. Do,
Sit on the floor?
yeah.
Yeah, full service here, huh?
Wethersfield staff, they aim to please.
Business friendly.
Business friendly.
I'm having the town planner make the motion. Get it all laid out.
There you go.
I'll be late.
What did we do here? I don't know why Denise had him check, it's not a special permit, it's a site plan.
That's from Double A.
Yeah, it's
That's the
not-
compressor
No,
from,
that's from the,
Yeah, it's an accessory to the principal use.
I don't think anybody else heard it.
Yeah,
It was a good joke.
I don't know why she had him check with permit, because it's a site plan, but.
it's consistent with the architecture.
Bill? You same group?
No, not that, but that's like with the form.
So good evening.
Yeah?
Yeah, exactly. You ran him out of town.
My name is Andrzej Golka. I'm an architect for this little project here where Berlin Turnpike, Route 515 and Maple Avenue coming together from Hartford. It's right on right-hand side corner. Fifth Avenue Motel, there is two wings of existing one-story building, and what we are proposing is to demolish, this is the view from this direction, to demolish this little office addition, those roofs here, this is addition from the 60s, aluminum and glass, basically, storefront, demolish this and build in place of this 500 approximately square feet in footprint, and one story and the second story above this, and additional 500 square feet of existing. So altogether is going to be about 2,000 square feet living quarters for owner or the manager. So it's like a one-family house attached to the motel.
And it's the front end of the structure that you're going to see from the street.
Yes. So.
Yeah, okay.
This little elevation is looking this way, like this is what's gonna happen on front, or on the side of the building, instead of, let's say, this elevation. We'd like to also make a little feature, architectural feature out of this to bring the attention for drivers by to stop and use the,
Are those gonna be the colors?
excuse me?
Are those gonna be the colors?
Those colors, as you see, the existing colors are pretty much this and this scheme, kind of brownish, reddish around the window and it was mixed with some gray siding and white trim, basically. It's not very complicated, and the base color is going to be brick, standard brick, nothing special. The roof color is going to be continuation of existing roof. As you see on the existing picture here, sort of like, it's clear, technical name, I forgot the color name.
Red?
It's like orange, but dark. It's a typical asphalt. So, addition is pretty much easy. There is no utility work involved because we are adding into the existing. We're going to use existing utilities. What we're going to reconfigure a little bit of parking spots here and adding up one more van handicap parking spot. In terms of parking, we have more than we need. And little might be restriping of the entrance and exit from.
What's that, for people to get out of their car and come in and rent?
Excuse me?
It's a place for the people to stop, sort of, and come in and rent. Not rent, but,
Here and this way.
yeah.
Do people live there today? So today, it's an existing use today?
Yes, this is existing use.
The caretaker?
The existing use is it's a motel, and owner uses right now 2
Okay.
units as his own living quarter, but he will make a real house for himself.
Now they want more of a house. They want more of a house now than
Yes,
they've had,
yeah.
yeah.
From my understanding, Peter, this is by right. He's allowed to.
It's an accessory to the principal use is obviously the motel. So many of these units have on-site living quarters for the caretaker. So it's an accessory use to the principal use. Obviously, it's the additional square footage, but the use is accessory use. That's the
And
application.
this enlargement doesn't trigger anything different in terms of the percentage of this versus what he has available for his business?
No, we don't really spell that out in the regulations for hotels, that, your percentage of your caretaker versus your number of units. We had
But
really,
You couldn't rent this out, you couldn't rent this unit out or anything?
no, it's only being provided as the on-site caretaker's unit.
If he's gonna rent out his own house, he's gonna pay for his own house somewhere else.
Maybe he doesn't like the neighborhood, right?
It's not gonna be economical for him, and then he has to drive to work.
Probably makes a lot of sense in these older motels. And this one here, in my opinion, going down there is very well kept, and it looked good.
Yeah,
Well
this is-
painted,
this is
it's
well
in good
maintained.
shape, the grounds are.
Yeah.
Some of them in town are not. Some are good. Yours looks pretty good.
There's a lot to be said about having an on-site owner residential presence rather than a,
Positive.
8-hour shift, somebody else coming in, or not having, ownership on site. So
Yeah, absolutely, and, the school buses have to be sent here, do you know? I mean, is that to pick up a,
many of the units up there do have longer term stay, and there are children. I don't know if the Fifth Avenue is in that category. I really couldn't answer that question.
No, last time he was here, he said it was mostly construction workers and
Maybe
things like
truckers
that.
or something.
thank you.
So the record, there is a memo. Did somebody raise their hand? I'll be back if they did. There is a memo in the file from Peter, and there are some comments. Did you see this memo dated April 29th from Peter?
The comments that pretty much implemented all of them on this sheet.
Thank you.
I gave this copy to Charlie yesterday.
Okay.
And if you want me to address any individual issue, I can.
Is there any in particular that you had a difficulty, taking care of?
Not really. I just, one comment maybe suggested the parking spaces, but I labeled this sidewalk is 5 to 6 inches above the pavement, so it's a natural stop for any car, parking against that. So I just labeled this more clearly that the pavement is higher than sufficient provides. Stoplights would be obviously additional, adding up difficulties into the plowing. And snow accumulation between the curb and also open even though our parking stalls are 1 foot longer than required by Wethersfield zoning regulation.
So there's no memo from the engineering department, but there's not much work going on here. Any concern with that? None?
No, no.
Okay.
I think we've handled some of the things that they might have mentioned.
Okay.
Another element in the memo here is I noticed that those comments was to show existing light fixtures. I have shown them here. There are light fixtures under the canopies at each motel room, which they lit sufficiently in the parking area. And there is a one light poles here, while light pole and this one provides lighting on front of the complex.
Did we have to, did we
We
get
were,
into that last time?
we were more concerned about if there were any additional lights for the new addition. That's really, yeah, I wasn't talking about the rest of the site.
The addition is going to be only light at the entrance to the housing, owner's housing quarter, and one light on the back
Okay.
to the office, and they're all going to be under the canopy, so
Yep.
there's no pollution
Mm-hmm. Okay.
in the sky.
The waiver for the landscaping,
Yeah, we granted a waiver when the second building was added. I think it was in 2007. So,
we have to do
I
it again.
no, I don't think you really have to do it again. No, so that's fine.
They got more green over there than I can think of.
Yeah, they got the
may not
whole
have
area in the
trees
back.
and bushes growing, but they have enough of them.
Yep.
Front is maybe not well, but it's warm and
We should be lucky all the other sites over there in the Berlin Turnpike have as much green area after the glass.
Design review, have to look at the structure, just for change?
They did.
Okay.
And they did approve it. So I thought that was in the.
Things like
did I
pavement and
just
so
miss it?
forth
I
are
don't know.
in good shape, the whole site.
Yeah, it is.
Everything's painted.
So the design review did approve it on April 6th with the condition that as the plan elevations get more finalized, that they may have to look at it one more time.
I suspect they did.
But they approved it.
He didn't present them in elevation, probably.
No, they saw this.
They saw that? Okay.
Yep.
But yours is gonna be the same color as your units, right? It'll be a darker yellow, brighter yellow.
I think a lighter yellow.
It'll be lighter?
Right.
Oh.
Lighter than
Fine.
existing. I would mention the one which is there now is kind of too sharp, but I think closer to the street I will go with little more.
No, my perception is that, this addition is, or this construction is going to make this site, much more attractive than it is now, given it'll sort of, I think, harmonize the kind of purpose that the owner is seeking for his motel as well as his own abode. I take it that the owner's not going to park his vehicle in any place other than the existing parking that's there, correct?
Yeah, this is what they intend to park it here.
Okay, so there's no intent for like a future accessory garage for his parking?
No, he doesn't need this. He might be researching possibility of building another, but he just asked me last question, if there is enough room.
Business is that good, huh?
Also, you can put a truck out there in that gradual
Yeah,
entryway, yeah.
He has
A truckers,
2 spots for
Yeah.
truckers.
works.
Right, and
I thought at one time, years ago, when I approved the last one, that we should cut that off or something, but that was a stupid thought at the time. I think it works.
It's a weak moment.
Looks good. I'm always having second thoughts
You did fine.
over the years.
Make sure that's in the minutes.
A question, there's a right-of-way back of it. And does that connect to the property to the south, to the car wash or whatever? Yeah, go back there. I think it does, but I didn't go back there today.
What's the question?
Yeah, it allows circulation, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a strange interconnection through the back of those properties that goes back many, many, many years. I'm not,
I don't see anything really wrong with leaving it there.
No,
It's in good shape. It may not be quite as good
It's
driveway as the
a
rest of it.
shortcut to Hooters.
there you go. Not that you would know that.
It's on the plans.
Okay.
With a note, shortcut to Hooters. All right, any other questions for the applicant? This is not a public hearing.
Ready to make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Do we need any conditions other than meeting the, the
Yeah, just refer to
conditions in
the
Peters?
April 29th staff memorandum.
Okay.
I guess the one
Do we
thought
have
I
to
had,
specifically talk about the waiver, or that's part of this?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Rich?
one thought I had, I know it's part of the application, but want to make it maybe want to make it a condition that it be used as, the residence for the owner or the manager, and it's not to be rented out as a separate unit.
Restrict it, Rich, is what you're
Yeah.
saying? Yeah, do that. Good, okay.
When you see the plans, it's really not possible. Because
Anything is
they-
possible.
Anything's fine.
Yeah.
Anything that is possible, but what we try to achieve is what he is trying to do. Because obviously a lot of business happens during the night. So he doesn't wanna have somebody full-time sitting behind the window and falling asleep and being bored and waiting for nothing. So he is going to have an office or, let's say, bedroom right next to it. So there's gonna be the ring waking him up, basically, or him, her, or whoever is on the ship, one of the kids, let's say.
He's gonna run it like a bed and breakfast without the breakfast, right?
Yeah.
It's bad.
It's like a yeah.
Like a motel. Exactly like a motel.
Yeah.
All right.
No,
Tries to use the time.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, it's just, this is an approval that runs with the land, not with the current owner. And somebody 20 years from now might have a different idea about making some money out of this
Yeah,
big building,
Close
so.
out the door, move partitions and
Yeah.
do things. But then they will have to, and they're gonna be, they will end up with very, very small front office, which actually will have access into from the residence.
Right.
So they will have to, technically they cannot do any if they don't come for building permit.
Right.
Remodel inside.
Right.
I mean, plan is such that it's not possible.
No, nobody's ever built anything without a permit.
Rich, it's.
Yeah, I think the essence of Rich's, proposal here is to take the owner at his word in terms of his use, and we embody that into a condition.
I'm not trying,
No, I know.
arguing your suggestion or anything. The comments are just, the comment is good and it's fine, and the owner can live with this happily, because in the design as it is, he does not intend to use it in any different way than just like presented, so.
Fair enough.
Right.
It's perfect.
Okay.
So we have a motion with an additional, and you're okay with that, right?
That condition added to it.
Was there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tony. Any further discussion on the topic? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, so this time we'll have to make a differentiation for who's not on, right? Because there's an extra body here. Yolanda, would you raise your hand? Thank you. You're not going to participate. So Yolanda did not participate. 9 positive votes.
I knew where that was going.
Thank you. You're all set. Good luck.
Why do you have to haze her like that?
Last time it was about pens. He didn't fool me.
All right, so there are some minutes.
I just looked surprised.
Minutes from April 19th. Joe and Jim was not here. So this is last meeting. Last meeting.
Night. Make a motion to approve the April 19th minutes.
Were you here?
Yeah. And I came on time.
That's right. All right, so we have a motion.
I'll second.
All right. Are there any comments? George, you got no edits? Okay.
But I'm not even sure that it even needed.
Excellent formatting.
Yeah,
Wait a minute.
I like it.
I can actually find my name.
Oh, well, wait a
No,
minute.
I found, but they're minor, I think. I don't even want to mention them.
Yeah, then no.
Then don't. Let's move on. We have a motion and a second. All those in
I
favor?
understand it. They may not be exact
Thank you very much.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Now, I think we'll find that with Jim abstaining because he wasn't part of it, then we have 9 votes, right?
Yes.
Okay. Next, staff reports. Anything, Peter?
The only thing I wanted to bring to attention, I don't know if, it was last year, back in August, you approved an accessory apartment for the property at 192 Clearfield.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
If you remember at that time, the plans were not clear as to what exactly was being proposed. The plans showed the building being somewhat attached to the rear side of the garage.
Sort of.
Sort of. We weren't really sure. So they've now applied for a building permit. What they are showing is a detached
Unit?
unit
Really?
with a breezeway into the main part of the house. So that was different. They've also added windows, dormers, et cetera, to the second floor. They've changed the elevations and such. So it wasn't what you approved when I pulled the file. I don't know if you feel that concerned about it, whether you want to see it again, but nevertheless, they're in the middle of the building permit process. They just submitted the plans without really talking to us about the changes. So it's in the middle of review now, and before I sign off on it, I wanted to run it by you before we comment on the plans that were submitted. So it certainly is different than what you approved. So
Since it's 4 houses away from me, and I am concerned with it, but I don't know if this is a big concern or not, because it's not attached is the primary change?
yeah, it's different in that respect. So
The height and aesthetic?
no, the height isn't. It's just they've changed. I think the changes to the architecture are an improvement.
An improvement.
But it just becomes an unusual. I don't know if it necessarily is precedent setting, but it's a sort of a detached building connected with this breezeway thing. I just don't, and you really didn't look at it in that light, and I just want to make sure that you're okay with that.
Can you bring it in and just present it to us without
Without
any
them?
hearing or anything like that?
I can certainly do that, but
Yeah,
and I probably, thinking of that now, should have probably brought him in to have you look at it, because I didn't put all the new sets of
I
drawings
don't want to hold them up.
drawings in here. But I
It's
just,
taken too long to get to this anyway.
Yeah.
That went through a public hearing, right?
it went through a public hearing, so technically, if I did bring it back to you, it probably should have to be re-advertised, and I don't know that it necessarily warrants that, but I just want to make sure So as I say, I think the architecture is an improvement. There's some things to it that I think we're gonna have to take off. There was like a lean-to storage thing in the back, I don't know what that was, which goes over the setback, so that's not gonna happen. The building that was, the plan that was submitted to you back last year was very bland. So as I said earlier, what they're proposing is certainly, from an architectural point of view, an improvement. It just is going to be a little bit unusual from the typical accessory apartment. The regulations do allow, they do allow a building like that to be, but I think you envisioned an addition to a building, and then it's connected to the main part of the house by an enclosed breezeway in your regulations.
Was an issue.
Which was an issue, and we discussed it, because we weren't sure how it actually was gonna be connected to the garage. So it's not a complete surprise that this design now that's been submitted is what it is.
So it's like a separate apartment.
It's a separate,
With an open breezeway?
behind the garage.
What if it was enclosed?
It has to be enclosed, per your regulations. Permanently enclosed breezeway
And they're
must be
proposing that to
provided.
be enclosed
The
also?
plans still really aren't even that clear, but they're gonna have to be based on the regulations. So they don't really have an option unless they wanna pursue a variance or something like that.
It's the only thing that keeps it from being two separate structures on the lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be, or then it's gonna have to come back and go through either ZBA or you guys again, so, that's
Is
certain.
it more square footage to the?
No, it's the same footprint, and it did have an upper, floor, before. They did submit a floor plan, at the time, but they are now proposing more, they did not submit a floor plan for the second floor, back then.
Should we have required more detail, or at least the final drawing prior to approval?
Yeah, looking back on it, I think we were very,
Because you mentioned setting precedent.
yeah. I think back then, looking at it, and there was conflict, and the memos all said that I think you were probably pretty lenient. You didn't ask them to come back and really clarify that, but nevertheless, it is what it is.
Do you think aesthetically it's
Better.
still complementary to the neighborhood?
Yeah, it's just a separate building and connected by what has to be an
Enclosed
enclosed breezeway, which is,
But are there more windows now? I mean.
there are more
you know,
windows, there are,
Just concerned with setting precedent with, again, the public have seen this, they know what they approve. I don't recall this application.
there were a couple of neighbors,
The past history, with.
yeah, there were a couple of neighbors who spoke at the hearing when I looked at the minutes. Let's just see. Let's see.
Trying to stir up troubles like up on
Not me.
How long is the breezeway?
It's probably gonna end up being 15 to 20 feet by the time they connect it to the,
I just don't wanna hold him up, as he never redid the yard, he did a
Right.
beautiful job in the house, and now for 2 years, the yard sits there
actually, there was a letter in the file from one of the neighbors, but it doesn't look like that neighbor showed up at the hearing, and that's probably why you guys didn't require them to submit. There was one neighbor from
where.
182 Clearfield, Mark St. Pierre, spoke in favor of the application, thinks it's an improvement to the property values all the way around. So,
Peter, if it's nothing inherently negative that you could see on
Yep.
the design, I mean, we rely on you to a large degree on so many of these applications.
the only reason I'm bringing it up is it's different than what was shown, but I think the difference is understood because we talked about it, and he wasn't sure of the final plan. Now he's proposed it. I think it's okay, but he's gonna have to do this attached, enclosed,
I agree.
and then
I'd
if he
suggest
doesn't
we
like
leave it
that,
to
then
you.
he can pursue alternative,
What he wants to do.
Go right ahead.
alternative
I
means.
agree with that.
Okay?
Yeah, the question for me is whether or not fundamentally, his plans for his building permit, comport with the concerns of the commission at the time. And it sounds like, they basically do.
They basically
even though
do.
there were a lot of details
With some final
missing at the
details,
time.
correct. Yep, exactly. It's the same footprint, so in the same general area, so.
Okay. Anything else there, 7, 8, 9, you want to talk about?
No, just number 9, you can see we've got a pile of applications, and we've got another pile coming for the following meeting. So the next meeting is going to be a bunch of things, so,
We did have 5 weeks off before this one. Do
So
we
don't
want to
plan
have,
anything the morning after.
well, why don't we have another one next week? You know, we'll have an extra meeting, because we have, you know.
The morning
I mean, you could always, if you don't get through some of these, is have a special meeting between this next one and then the one in June, if need be. We can maybe discuss that at the time, depending upon how far through this list. I mean, if you look at the applications, the 1024 is a continuation, right, of, so that we've already, now they've just got to come in with the revised plans to address some of your comments. City Fish wants to talk about the sign that's already up there, so
What do you want to talk about?
you'll hear it at the hearing, George. I don't want to prejudge or have you start discussing the
Is he talking about the number of changes in the?
he wants to talk about the conditions that you
No
attached.
spoilers.
Yep.
If he wanted to raise it up, I'm in favor.
I just don't want to get on the, into a discussion about,
He just wants to approve it now.
there you go.
It shouldn't take long, because these are
no.
all 9.2.
Well, yeah, I guess they are.
They're all
We'll just
one-
combine them into one motion.
application.
Consolidate them.
We'll hear them all at once.
Let's see, so there's
Simultaneous.
another electronic message sign,
You take this one. you take
5 podiums.
an accessory apartment, Cedar Hill Cemetery, another mausoleum they want to put up there, and those don't tend to be controversial. There's nobody up there to, so I don't know that, you wouldn't get through all of these, at the meeting, but we've been pushing other people off. We didn't want to add to this.
Okay.
Or we can just start denying things, that way we won't have as many applications.
So did you just say all of them are going to be on
So-
the next agenda?
Yeah.
They'll all be on the next one, all 7 of these?
Yes.
Yikes.
Now, if they were as well prepared as the 2 tonight, we could satisfy a lot quickly.
Yeah, and we'll spend some time with the applicants ahead of time so that the comments are minimal if we can do that. And then obviously, you do have the 11 o'clock rule. If we get to 11 o'clock and you haven't opened a hearing, you can basically
Yeah,
tell
but
them.
we don't do that.
You haven't had to do it in a long time.
We will,
Okay.
right?
Push comes to shove, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
1, 2, 3.
Get real cranky.
7 is 2 an hour. Let's move it along. Okay, unless there's something else, would somebody offer me a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you very much. Can I have a second? Thank you. That's Tony second, Tom and Tony. All those in favor say aye? Aye. I'll assume nobody opposes. Oh, I suppose it's too late, but
I tripped you.
Well, 'cause I keep on thinking on your space.
No, you're good.
We do have a new town engineer starting in a month, the assistant town engineer in Manchester.
Still on, right?